The wind moves across endless fields of corn, soft, steady, almost like a voice. A voice carrying something more than the rustle of leaves. It carries a memory. A memory of a people whose name still lingers here, even though their footsteps have long faded from this land. Iowa. For most, it's just a state on the map, fields, rivers, heartland values. But behind that name lies a story. A story of a tribe whose peaceful spirit once defined this land, and whose whispers still echo across it. The word, Iowa, doesn't come from settlers. It doesn't come from pioneers, railroads, or politics. It comes from the Ioway people, a native tribe who lived here for centuries, long before state lines were ever drawn. Some say their name meant, the sleepy ones. Others say it meant, beautiful land. But no matter the translation, it was never just a word. It was identity. It was home. It was life. The Ioway lived along the rivers, planting corn, hunting deer, and building villages. They carried traditions, songs, and beliefs tied to the land itself. And yet, the very name that still defines this place would outlive the people it was meant to represent. Because as America grew westward, the Ioway found themselves caught in a tide of change they could not escape. Long before Iowa was farmland, long before its borders were marked on a map, the land was alive with the rhythm of the Ioway people. They were not wanderers. They were builders, farmers, and caretakers of the soil. Villages dotted the riverbanks, where families grew corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters of their survival. The rivers gave them fish, the forests gave them game, and the prairies stretched out before them, rich and endless. The Ioway lived by balance. They hunted, yes, but always with respect, taking only what was needed. They farmed, but never in a way that stripped the land. Their lives were guided by tradition, by ritual, and by a quiet dignity that came from knowing they belonged to the land as much as the land belonged to them. Unlike many tribes who became known for warfare, the Ioway earned a different reputation. Neighboring nations often saw them as more reserved, less aggressive, sometimes even called peaceful ones. Yet in that peace, there was also vulnerability. They lived at the crossroads of cultures. The Sioux to the north, the Osage to the south, the Oto and Missouri nearby. Tribes clashed, alliances shifted, and the world around them grew more dangerous. The Ioway had to navigate carefully, sometimes trading, sometimes retreating, always adjusting to survive in the middle of rising tensions. Still, they endured. Their villages stood firm, their ceremonies echoed across the prairies, their children grew up learning songs and stories tied to every bend of the river. For centuries, the Ioway were woven into the very identity of this land. But even as they thrived, something new was stirring on the horizon. A force far greater than tribal rivalries. A tide rolling westward, unstoppable, reshaping the land and the lives of everyone it touched. The Ioway could not yet see it fully, but the shadow of expansion was already falling across their world. The 1800s brought a storm the Ioway could not outrun. It began quietly, traders arriving with goods of iron, cloth, and guns. But every gift carried a price, and every treaty carried a trap. At first, the Ioway exchanged furs for tools, but soon, these exchanges gave way to demands. Demands for land, demands for rivers, demands for the very ground beneath their villages. The United States was expanding westward at a relentless pace, driven by settlers who saw fertile fields and endless promise. For the Ioway, it meant signing treaties that shrank their homeland piece by piece. What was once thousands of miles of prairie and river valley became fragments on a map, until even those fragments slipped away. By the mid-1800s, most of the Ioway people were forced to leave their ancestral home. Some were pushed into Kansas. Others found themselves in Nebraska, or scattered farther still. What had been a nation tied to the land of present-day Iowa now lived in exile, cut off from the soil that carried their ancestors' bones. And yet, even as the people were uprooted, their name was planted deeper than ever. The state of Iowa was born in 1846, its name taken directly from the Ioway, as if to honor them. But in reality, it was a haunting irony. The name survived, the people did not. Settlers spoke of Iowa as if it were simply a place, a rich farmland, a new frontier, a chance to build. Few remembered, or even cared, that the name was once a living identity, spoken in the language of a tribe that had been forced to vanish from its own home. The Ioway became ghosts in their own land, remembered only in fragments. A state name, a river, a county, a handful of place names scattered like echoes. And so Iowa grew. The cities rose, the farmlands spread, the railroads stretched across the prairies. But beneath the progress, the question remained: how can a people's name live on so proudly, when their presence has been nearly erased? That question still lingers today, in the modern state that bears their name. Today, Iowa is known as the heartland of America. Miles of cornfields stretch toward the horizon. Towns thrive around grain elevators and railroads. Universities stand tall, shaping new generations. To most Americans, Iowa represents stability, agriculture, and the quiet strength of rural life. But if you search for the Ioway people within this state that bears their name, you will not find villages or thriving communities. You will not hear their language spoken on the streets of Des Moines or Iowa City. Their presence is not woven into the daily life of the state in the way their name is. Instead, you find traces, faint, fragile echoes of a past that refuses to vanish completely. Museums hold artifacts, pottery, tools, and sacred objects once carried by Ioway hands. Historical markers stand at certain river crossings, whispering to passers-by of a time before statehood. A handful of Ioway descendants, living now in Oklahoma, Kansas, and Nebraska, continue the fight to keep their traditions alive, reviving their language, preserving their songs, and teaching their children what it means to belong to a people nearly forgotten. And yet, in the very land called Iowa, their story remains largely hidden. Schoolchildren may learn the name, but not the people. Farmers may till the soil, but few know whose footsteps once walked there first. The irony deepens. The name of Iowa is spoken daily by millions, but rarely with awareness of its true origin. This silence creates a tension, a gap between memory and reality. The state carries the name proudly, but the people behind it live mostly in shadows, remembered only in fragments. And so, a question rises from the quiet fields and bustling towns alike. If a name survives while a people are forgotten, what does that name truly mean? The word, Iowa, carries two very different worlds inside it. For millions today, it means farmland, harvest, the backbone of America's food supply. It means small towns where neighbors know each other, Friday night football games, and a way of life tied to the rhythm of the land. But for the descendants of the Ioway, the name cuts deeper. To them, it is not just geography. It is memory. It is the sound of their ancestors' voices carried by rivers. It is the echo of villages burned away by time and displacement. It is both pride and pain, an honor on one hand, and on the other, a constant reminder of what was taken. This duality raises a haunting truth. Names are not just words. They are vessels. They carry history, they carry memory, and sometimes they carry contradictions too heavy to ignore. The state of Iowa stands as both a living tribute and a silent erasure. It remembers the Ioway every time its name is spoken, but it forgets them in the very way their story is left untold. So what does Iowa really mean? Is it only the heartland, the breadbasket of a modern nation? Or is it something older, something whispered from the soil itself, a name reminding us that every place has a story, and every story has a cost? That question does not fade. It lingers, like a voice on the wind, a voice that draws us toward the final truth, where history and memory meet. Listen closely, and you will hear it. Not in textbooks. Not in headlines. But in the quiet of Iowa's fields, where the wind bends the corn and the rivers keep flowing. It is the whisper of a people who once lived here, a people who gave this land its name. The Ioway may no longer walk these valleys in great numbers, but their spirit endures. In every syllable spoken when we say, Iowa, their story is not gone. It is waiting. Waiting to be remembered. Waiting to be told. Waiting for us to hear the truth that still lives beneath the soil. Iowa is more than a state. It is an echo, a reminder, a living testament that history never truly disappears. It lingers in the land, in the names, and in the whispers of those who came before us. And if we listen, truly listen, we may hear not just the story of Iowa, but of America itself. A nation built on names, on peoples, on memories both honored and forgotten. The question is, will we let those whispers fade into silence? Or will we carry them forward, so the name Iowa is not just a place, but a living remembrance of the people who gave it life? Because in every breeze, in every field, in every voice that speaks the name, Iowa, the Ioway are still here, and their whisper will never fade. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it, discuss it, and carry it forward. Subscribe for more untold histories, stories hidden beneath the names we say every day. Together, we can give voice to the echoes of the past, and ensure they are never forgotten.